Burkina Faso, a country often missing from global headlines. Landlocked. Forgotten. But not for those who watch closely. Not for those who understand that where there is silence, there is often something far more dangerous, a quiet revolution. And in the eye of this revolution stands one man, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. At just 34 years old, he seized power with a vision. To restore dignity to a fractured state. To purge the influence of neo-colonialism. And to protect the sovereignty of a people long manipulated from afar. But as Traoré began carving a new path, the old powers didn't stay idle. Some say they watched. Others say they moved in. And among the whispers was one name, the French agent. A man who entered the country under false pretenses. A man whose mission was buried beneath layers of diplomacy, intelligence gathering, and silent war. This is the story of how foreign interests clashed with a rising African wave, and what really happened inside Burkina Faso. In late 2022, Traoré overthrew Paul-Henri Damiba, citing growing insecurity, corruption, and ties to foreign interests as the main reasons. The Burkinabe people, weary from relentless jihadist attacks and dwindling hope, embraced him like a prophet. But as he severed ties with France, expelling troops, shutting down military bases, and cutting off French media, he also inherited enemies. Some public, many invisible. Traoré's rhetoric was sharp. Africa will no longer be a playground for foreign agendas. He spoke of sovereignty. He forged closer ties with Mali, Guinea, and Niger, creating what would be dubbed the Alliance of Sahel States. He praised the memory of Thomas Sankara, the legendary Pan-Africanist assassinated in 1987 under suspicious circumstances, widely believed to involve foreign complicity. And it was in this charged atmosphere that intelligence officers in Ouagadougou began noticing strange patterns. A foreign documentarian, with unusually high-level access, asking too many questions, filming military bases, interviewing villagers near conflict zones, tapping into unofficial sources. He claimed to be a journalist, funded by a French independent studio, producing a documentary on the Sahel crisis. He carried credentials. He spoke French fluently, blended in. But something was off. Traoré's newly formed intelligence agency, under the Ministry of State Security, flagged him. Quietly, without noise. Burkina Faso's leadership had seen too many journalists plant seeds of chaos. In the name of freedom of the press came operatives, moles, and agitators. They would not make that mistake again. The man, referred to in intercepted communications as Lucien, was no ordinary filmmaker. He entered the country from Togo, avoiding the heavily scrutinized Ghana border. He stayed in Bobo Dioulasso for a few days, then quietly moved toward the north, closer to the red zones where jihadist activity was rampant. In theory, no foreign civilian had business there. Especially not alone. Especially not without military escort. He met with disaffected army officers. He filmed burned villages. He asked about supply chains. And most importantly, he tried to uncover where Traoré was receiving support after cutting France off. The suspicion, Lucien was there to expose Russian influence. Or to plant evidence of it. If Traoré could be publicly linked to Wagner mercenaries, already controversial in Africa, it would justify international sanctions, isolate his regime, and potentially provoke unrest from within. Lucien's mission was layered. His camera was real, but so was the data extraction device hidden in his laptop. So were the GPS pings. So were the encrypted notes he tried sending via satellite uplink. But Burkina Faso wasn't sleeping. Traoré's intelligence unit had embedded agents in the same circles Lucien thought were off radar. They followed him. They studied him. They waited. It happened just before dawn. Lucien had just returned from a border village, near Dori, after a clandestine interview. He was resting in a nondescript guesthouse, walls painted green, with creaky wooden shutters and no Wi-Fi. He thought he was safe. At exactly 4:03 a.m., black SUVs surrounded the compound. No sirens. No lights. The arrest was silent. Lucien was taken not to a police station, but to a secure military facility outside Ouagadougou, known only as Zone Eclipse. There, investigators unlocked his devices. What they found shook even seasoned intelligence agents. High-resolution drone footage of restricted military sites. maps tracking convoy routes, an AI-powered script analyzing troop movement based on social media posts, an unfinished script titled The Ghosts of Sankara, Russia's Puppet in the Sahel. He had never intended to make a neutral documentary. It was an information weapon. Traore now had a diplomatic crisis on his hands. France immediately denied Lucien was their asset. They called him a freelancer and demanded his release. But Burkina Faso refused. For Traore, this was bigger than one man. This was about a pattern of foreign intrusion, media manipulation, and covert operations dressed as diplomacy. He made a calculated decision. There would be no televised trial, no press conference, no circus. Lucien would be detained indefinitely under internal security laws. The world would whisper, but not act. And something else happened. Burkina Faso published a heavily redacted intelligence brief to African Union leaders and key allies. In it, they warned of foreign attempts to destabilize the Sahel alliance. The brief also highlighted similar patterns seen in Niger and Mali. The message was clear. We know what's coming, and we're ready. To the average viewer, this might seem like Cold War drama in a faraway land. But to those watching history unfold, it's much more. The capture of Lucien wasn't just a win for Traore. It was a declaration that Africa is not blind, that it is no longer passive. In the past, leaders like Sankara, Lumumba, and Gaddafi rose to challenge the world order and paid with their lives. Traore knows this. He walks in their shadow. He travels discreetly, trusts a small circle, speaks rarely, acts quickly. Some say he's too radical. Others, not radical enough. But one thing is certain. His name has entered the bloodstream of a continent seeking change. As of today, Lucien remains in custody. France continues to deny involvement. The Western media has moved on, preferring simpler headlines. But in the backrooms of embassies and in the dusty courtyards of Ouagadougou, whispers persist. Who sent Lucien? What else was uncovered? And, most haunting of all, how many more Luciens are still out there? Africa is changing. The ground beneath old empires is cracking. And men like Ibrahim Traoré are pushing history forward, faster than anyone expected. But in the shadows, the war never stopped. It just learned to hide better.